Political interventions in national and international sports have been around for as long as borders have been drawn, but they're not always welcome, and sometimes they're given the red card, literally. And with the Arab region's first World Cup just around the corner, these double standards are really showing.
3, 2, 1, let's go in depth.
Qatar.
Politics is seen weighing differently on the scale of humanitarian issues, with sports oftentimes being accused of promoting double-standard politics. Despite claims by sports officials that the industry should not mix with politics, recent events have indicated otherwise, begging some serious questions: who decides which cause is worthy? Should players be given the boot? And where do sports organizations draw the line when it comes to crimes against humanity? Let's scroll back to ancient Greece. These guys loved fusing politics with sports. During the Olympic Games, Greek leaders discussed important political issues, celebrated military victories, and even formed political and military alliances. Many men died during these events, and many for the sole entertainment of the king, his queen, and the general public.
But these were instances of direct and feasible separation of sports and state. What we want to look at are gestures of solidarity during sports events being weighed according to the double standard approach that pits one struggle against the other. The oppression Olympics, if you will.
1968, Mexico City. It's the Olympic medal ceremony, and African-American sprinters Tommie Smith and John Carlos are standing before the victory podium to receive their respective gold and bronze medals. The two wore beads and scarves to oppose the rampant lynching of black people back home, as well as black socks with no shoes to highlight poverty. Their fists were raised and heads were bowed as the American national anthem bellowed through the speakers. In response, complete outrage.
The actions of Smith and Carlos, doubtless the preponderant weight of American public opinion will support the committee, but nothing is solved really. The
Games are 1 week old today, and yesterday, the 6th day, was the most dramatic so far.
I had said that if there were any demonstrations at the Olympic Games by anyone, the participants would be sent home.
For their peaceful protests of injustice and racism in the US, Smith and Carlos were suspended from the United States Olympic team and even forced out of the Olympic Village. From that moment, the two athletes would be vilified and threatened, but in many circles, and as history would ultimately remember them, celebrated as heroes.
I know what you're thinking. It's an isolated incident. Cue Colin Kaepernick.
Wouldn't you love to see one of these NFL owners, when somebody disrespects our flag, to say, get off the field right now, out, he's fired.
In August 2016, Kaepernick knelt down during the national anthem in solidarity with the Black Lives Matter movement. The act created a major issue nationwide. The NFL went as far as briefly banning kneeling or sitting during the anthem. And until now, Kaepernick has been unable to find a team willing to sign him due to the incident. Let's take it to the pitch. In 2019, Qatar's national team stood in solidarity with their home country at the height of the region's worst political crisis in history. So what happened next? VAR check please. Yes, FIFA fined and reprimanded the country's football federation for getting political at a World Cup qualifying match. Okay, you know what's coming next, right? The One Love armband. 10 countries have already announced that their captains will wear them throughout the World Cup 2022, and no footballing body has yet stood against this. Over in Europe, German-Turkish footballer Mesut Ozil criticized China's treatment of Uyghur Muslims in 2019, prompting serious backlash from the powers that be. His club at the time, Arsenal, distanced itself from his comments, stating that it does not get involved in politics. But then the same club did not stop itself from joining other clubs, organizations, and brands in voicing support for Ukraine earlier this year. The English Premier League as a whole announced that clubs would be displaying messages of solidarity with Ukraine at a host of matches earlier this year. This act of solidarity was in direct response to the Russian invasion of Ukraine, a conflict that garnered mass media attention almost immediately after the first airstrike. Since then, a number of clubs around Europe terminated long-term contracts with Russian sponsors, stripping all trace of Russian companies from football shirts. Unlike Smith and Carlos, the players on the fields of Europe received no death threats, and in fact, acts of solidarity were applauded.
I know, this is an invasion. But there was complete silence from the footballing world when the US carried out one of the deadliest invasions and committed horrific human rights abuses during the Iraq War in 2003. No solidarity movements, no boycotts, no applause for those who did speak out.
And such applause is not afforded to all causes, say Palestine for example. For far too long, the Palestinian cause has been deemed less important or too political, and hence not a humanitarian issue that can easily be picked up by multi-billion-dollar corporations with a heart. Surprise, surprise.
This point was picked up by advocates earlier this year, when suddenly the Russian invasion of Ukraine normalized the trend of mixing sports and politics together.
Famous Arab footballers like Mohamed Abu Trika pointed this out and called for the banning of Israel from all sports events since it was easily done for Russia. Abu Trika himself has been a victim of double standards in sports. In his case, he displayed solidarity with Gazans under Israeli blockade back in 2008 by revealing a t-shirt with the slogan "Sympathy with Gaza" during a match at the Africa Cup of Nations. The Confederation of African Football was quick to issue him a warning for mixing politics with sports. Then in 2009, a similar pattern. Former French-born Malian footballer Frédéric Canute was fined by the Royal Spanish Football Federation for showing his solidarity with Palestine during a match. But you know, it's just easier for Eurocentric sporting bodies to in 4 days ban Russia for its invasion of Ukraine, but Palestinians who have been witnessing more than 70 years of occupation under the Israeli regime have to bite their tongues for leading too much of a political life. For years, rights groups and the Palestinian boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement have called on football associations and the international community to give Israel the red card. Yeah. Such silence is nowhere to be found now in the case of the first-time World Cup host Qatar. The Gulf state has been on the receiving end of incessant Western scrutiny over its migrant labor rights since winning the bid to host the FIFA World Cup back in 2010. Media coverage and reports by rights groups have quickly and swiftly been taken on by European football federations, many of which have called for an all-out boycott of the 2022 World Cup, even in mere weeks before kickoff. The Danish football team went as far as dimming down its football kit for the tournament, saying it doesn't want to be visible at the World Cup in Qatar while playing at the World Cup in Qatar. In neighboring France, a number of French cities have even refused to set up screens for the millions of football fans waiting to watch their national team play at the World Cup. Rich for a country that literally watches migrants drown in the sea. But that's a discussion for another day.
It's hard to pinpoint a reason why such different approaches are taken for different causes. But one can speculate. From here, it seems like the Western world is almost conditioned to jumping on criticism of a non-Western country, while at the same time making excuses for turning a blind eye to barbaric practices of its allies. The good thing is, these double standards appear to be showing themselves more and more, with every raised fist, taking of the knee, or flag raised.
And there you have it. That was the third episode of In Depth Season 2. With just 2 days left for kickoff, make sure you download our app and follow us on social media to keep up to date with all things World Cup. See you next time.